All right. Well, today is Friday, January 15th, 2021. We made it. And this is Demetrius Gelatis here with Cue It Up Podcast. And with me on the phone is Josh Burbul. Josh, say hi to the gang.
Hey, hi, everyone.
All right. So today I am backed into a corner here because I am leading a podcast for my first time. Neight is tied up. He is neck deep in the VG10, the Virtual Ghost Tournament that's currently underway. And so just to kind of make sure that we don't have radio silence here for the duration of the tournament, we talked about it, and he's going to let me venture out into the wild on my own. I feel like a kid crossing the street and staying out after dark for the first time, trying to go to that corner store, and I'm like studiously looking both ways at the stoplight and really making sure I'm in the crosswalk. This is a big step for me. So hopefully I deliver and we have a good show. What we're going to do today is I'm going to introduce you to Josh Burbul, and he's our special guest. So we're going to have a good time getting to know him and why he's on the podcast. Then some of the topics we're going to cover today is a little bit about him. He's a professional level player that's now spreading his wings in the scene and having some fun with it. Meanwhile, we're then going to dive in on some things that he's learned over the years, and that'll be our main conversation, is some of his memorable matches and lessons from along the way that helped him kind of grow from beginner to strong amateur to where he's at now. And then finally, we're going to take out a couple listener questions and conclude with a Coach's Corner, backed by popular demand. So I've gotten a lot of feedback saying people really like those, so I've got one lined up. So with that said, I will, with no further ado, I will introduce Josh here. So Josh Burbul is my best friend, longtime road partner. He lives in Minnesota, and he plays a hell of a game of pool. So that's the only introduction. Oh, and for all you Fargo rate guys, he's over 700. I don't know exactly. Fargo rate's like tremendously out of date. There's been no new data for over a year. And so I don't know, but for all you guys that are like, well, I mean, was it Fargo? Just trust me, he can play. So that's what I've got. So how's it going today, Josh?
It's awesome. I'm all set, man. I think well, first of all, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, we should offer the drinking game for the listeners. If every time I squeeze in a humble brag, you got to take a shot. So by the time we get to Coach's Corner, I think everyone will be passed out drunk.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's Josh and I. We always enjoy a good humble brag. There's nothing better than like, yeah, I can't believe I lost to so and so hill.
Exactly,
anyway, okay.
In the finals. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I can't believe. I mean, I got to 120 and I dogged the break ball. It's like, yeah. We hear you. You ran 120. Okay. So, all right. Very good. So let's start off with our shout outs. Shout outs being just somebody that we want to recognize in the pool world and just say hi. And so I will kick off to kind of lead by example, because this is a new thing for you. But I will say shout out to Tango Bravo Zulu. That is the handle for a gentleman. I don't know, he's a junior. Is it Edward? He goes by Junior, best I can tell, but I knew him as Tango Bravo Zulu TBZ. He's a guy that I kind of met through the chat on a little Chris live stream we did. And since then, we've been in contact. And the reason I'm shouting out to him is because he followed through. I gave him a challenge. He was asking some advice about like preparing for a tournament. And I gave him some advice. And specifically, I told him to treat the mental game like the physical game, and that everybody here should know my opinion by now, but just that basically that dealing with mental challenges is just as real as making physical shots. In the same way that you can learn a new shot and be like, oh, here you can bake the ball, and here you can combo that ball from here, and here's how you can throw a ball. The same way that there's ways to handle mental situations. So I gave him a challenge to kind of write out the 3 or 4 things that were going to be the most challenging to him in terms of pressure, distraction, things like that. And then kind of spent a little time writing about why those things were disturbing and maybe an idea of how he'd like to kind of handle those spots. And so anyway, he took me up on that challenge, and he did some journaling, and he showed me what he put together. And I just wanted to say I applaud that, because regardless of what skill level each of us is at, the ability to kind of roll up your sleeves, take a deep breath, and stare yourself in the eye and put your best foot forward. That to me is the heart of a champion. So thank you for following through, TBZ, and passing it on to you, Josh. Anybody out there in the pool world you'd like to say hi to?
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking about this down, and I'm like, so this is fine. It's just it's not a troll on you, but it's like, Brian Brecky. Okay, so like Dem and I travel a lot, and there was one tournament where we were sitting in the hotel room, and I go, it'd be cool. I wish Brecky was here, because I've traveled a lot with Brian prior to Demi, kind of, and it was just funny. So so now when I always say I wish Brecky was here, even though whatever, doesn't matter. So as like a joke towards them, inside joke. So yeah, but Brian Brecky. So in coincidentally, he just called me before the podcast, so it was good to talk to him. But like, he's a guy that like I grew up playing with. Like I started playing like a lot of amateur tournaments with him, regionally, and also like Valley and BCA league stuff. And yeah, I mean, he really is like a bulldog, man. He like really works hard on his game, and just showed me from the outside, just kind of watching him, like what it is to grind at the table and what it is to concentrate, and just like push all in and just try to wring the rag and get everything you can out of your game. And yeah, so I just was thinking about him and wanted to give him a shout out. And the guy's he's a hell of a player, and I've won not quite a bit, but I mean I've won money betting on him and chopping tournaments and things, and not like winning chopping, but just like playing tournaments and going halves. And like we went to a Florida tournament, he got super deep into the finals, and like a 10-ball pro event down there, and it was just cool. Like I've just watched him play a lot over the years. I learned a lot by watching him play, and he's had a big impact on my game. That's it. Brian Brecky, shout out.
All right, so Brian Brecky, yes, Brian Brecky. Josh and I have had some good times on the pool table. Brian Brecky, hey, if you're listening, hello. Okay, so next we are going to phase into, I want to introduce Josh. I've introduced him, but now I want to pass it over to him. So Josh, what I'd like to hear is just tell the listeners a little bit about your pool playing, how you got started, your days, kind of upcoming, maybe a little bit as how you got into the regional scene, and then kind of where you're at now, and what's in front of you.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so go. Yeah. Okay. So I started playing when I was 13, playing pool. My dad played, I don't know, like not great, but he was interested in pool, and he was around pool and gambling and poker and different things. And he even traveled a little bit and like went around and staked some guys, and he would always tell stories, right? So growing up, I'd always hear stories, and I'd watch him, at poker games that he'd host, and it's kind of, he was around gambling and action and pool, and my older brother took me out to a pool room when I was really young. I could barely even see over the top of the table, and so I was kind of around pool, and my family kind of played pool, and so then the Color Money came out when I was 13, and I just fell in love. Like I was just like enamored with that movie and that story and how pool looked on screen. And I just absolutely was just all in on pool. And so my brother, I think at the time, and my dad and I, my other brother, Jason, my 1 year older brother, he didn't play either at the point. We were like 13 and 14, but we all went out and played that night. And I just, from that moment forward, my older brother, he was, around 20 at that time, he showed me how to hold a cue right away. And it's just from there, I just kind of took off in pool.
Okay. Hey, Josh, I'm going to interrupt you here. I got a question. What year was it when you're talking about this? Like roughly what year are we talking about?
Oh yeah. So 13, 73, 86-ish, when the Color Money came out, like 84, right? 85. So
I think it was 86. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
86 or 86. Yeah. Probably 86. Must have been. Yeah. Cause I was around 13.
Okay. Gotcha. I just wanted to know what time frame that was. Keep going.
Oh yeah. No problem. So then I started playing pool, and like I took it fast. Like I have pretty like good high hand coordination, I've come to find out over the years, and so I took the pool really like lickety split fast. Like I was competing right away, playing people for money, and like playing these small tournaments. So we'd play at arcades and like Circus Pizza, and play. I'd bring my report card and get tokens, and I'd put my quarters up and challenge. And so basically kind of fast forward, like from like 13 to 16, before I got a car, I basically played every day and just was playing, just gambling and playing small tournaments. Yep. So and putting together a bankroll. Like I would go out and with $20 and I'd come home with $60, and you know, my dad had this little thing where he would save it and put it on the books, quote unquote. So by the time I was 16, I had $3 or $4 grand saved up, and I was just kind of playing, you know, full-time pool as a, you know, a young teenager. So yeah. So then after that, from like 16 to 19, I got, you know, dusted off my bankroll. Didn't play as much pool as far as like, I was still playing kind of a lot, but not quite as much, and still getting better and working on my game and competing more from like arcades to like pool rooms at that point, from like 15 to 19, and you know, just played a lot within Minnesota and built up to where I was playing pretty well by the time I was, you know, 16, 17 years old, and then just kind of like fumbling around from like 17 to 19 until I graduated high school-ish, you know, got into college. So, and then I quit, like just kind of quit playing because I just didn't see a big future in it. And I'm like, I just thought I wanted to have more of a, I don't know, normal life or like, it just didn't seem like I was going to amount to much, like during that path, I guess, in my mind. I'm trying to remember back, but so I kind of quit, and then I didn't play from like 19 till about 24, 25.
All right, so I want to interrupt because I have a question about that. Is when you quit pool, you know, you were, you know, 18, 19, and you quit for a while. You said that you were kind of feeling like you didn't really have much future, but I know that you were playing pretty darn well. So I want you to take a minute, just kind of how good, you know, I know these answers, but how good were you hitting them when you were 17, 18? And because I find it interesting that, you know, that you would conclude that there wasn't much future for you. Zoom in on that for me.
Oh, sure. So the easiest way I think to explain it is like, you know, like I look back at when I played, and I played in a vacuum, man. Like I didn't have anyone to tell me how I was playing, so I just thought I was gobbledygook. So even though I was like playing every, you know, I was playing nightly tournaments and playing a lot, and sort of, you know, I'd made a bunch of, you know, not a bunch, but I made money and was successful in those and things. It didn't see a future for that reason. And then because I didn't really know that what I was doing had any future. It just seemed like, oh, well, it's just what you do. So then, like, as far as like level of play, like I remember playing a guy at, this is like Brunswick's with 4.5, 4 3/4 pockets, whatever, probably 4 3/4 pockets. I mean, I just remember like, you know, playing him and getting, you know, 24 games ahead in several sessions, and like running 3 racks quite a bit, like more than once, like within those sessions, and it's like stuff like that, or else, you know, I'm trying to think of what else. Like, oh, I took a lesson from this guy Mark Foss, who was a great player, you know, regionally at the time, and on the, you know, whether he was pro or on the cusp of pro at the time, he came into Minnesota and started just kind of mopping up. And so I took a lesson from him when I was like 16 or so. And, you know, long story short, like I ended up going and playing in you know, an unhandicapped at the time, of course, LOL, like Minnesota level tournament of all the best players. And I got through to the finals and actually played Mark in the finals the next weekend after we worked. Like we worked on a Wednesday or something. And so, and I just remember him like being really blown away at how well I played. And I had no idea that I played good. And you know, I just whatever. So it's like, so that doesn't mean, oh, I was one of the best players in Minnesota. But I mean, if you go to a Minnesota level tournament with no handicap and we're playing races to 9 on 9-foot tables, and I get into the finals against this guy Mark, it's like that's playing pretty strong, you know, and running 3 racks multiple times. It's like I must have been playing pretty good, is what I'm saying, Dem. So.
Yeah, so you're hitting them good, and you're beating. I mean, you were, to get to the finals, you're beating some of the top players in Minnesota. And you're like what, 17 at the time?
Yeah, 16, 17, probably 16ish. Yeah.
So it just seems, and this is kind of interesting, and I think there's a lesson to be learned for a lot of people listening. Is, you know, in pool, there's a lack of encouragement from a lot of people, because there's a lot of people that view success like, if you have it, then that costs them, you know, like everything's relative. So if you're good, that must make them bad. And there's a lot of insecurity and a lot of people that are kind of like, you know, it's just not the most supportive environment. Everyone's trying to beat you. Everyone's trying to like be better than you. People feel threatened. when they see young talent. And so it's, you know, we've talked about it, and I know it's like there was kind of a void of support that just like nobody ever once told you, hey, man, you're good at this game. You should do something with it, right? It was just kind of a void.
100%. That's why I said I played in a vacuum, man. Like I played in a vacuum. Like I feel like I was like playing really, really good looking back, and like I had no idea like that it was even any good. I just thought, well, this is just, I put in a lot of work. I want to win. I want to beat these guys. And it's like, that's it, you know. There was no like, oh, you have this ability, or you're doing something kind of cool or dynamic, and it's like, no, I mean, it's like nothing. It's like crickets, you know. So, and
yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, I don't want to, you know, wham ambulance, but like it's not even like it's crickets. It's like people that are like divisive towards you, you know, where it's like they actually will tell you negative things, you know, instead of like just being, you know, faint praise or nothing.
Yeah, they're undermining. And so for people listening, I mean, I think that you have to be really careful with who you associate with. You have to find people that are going to be building and not undermining. And at the same time, understand that, you know, if you feel like there's a lack of support and feedback in this game, that's just the nature of a lot of the players that compete. And so you really have to kind of look to yourself and look to people that you can surround yourself with that are supportive. There are people out there that are supportive. So, but I mean, I'd say you have to get most of it from within, and you can't wait for permission from other people to go out and succeed in pool. You kind of have to just, you know, do it yourself, because what we see is, you know, I know Josh pretty well, and it was almost like he was waiting for somebody to say, hey man, you're an awesome kid. You're an awesome player. Good job. Keep going. And like, nobody did that. And so, yeah, we're not here to like cry over spilled milk, and the past is the past and everything worked out, you know, great. But it's like, I just think that's something that's profound to me when you tell me about that story. And I just wanted to highlight that for the listeners. So that's, because that led to you kind of taking a break from pool. So what did you do during your break, and how'd you get back into it?
You know what? I went to college. I ended up just like, I mean, I didn't know what to do, man. I was like just busted out at like 18 or 19. I barely graduated high school, you know, which changed in college as far as grades and things. But like, because I was just so all in on just like playing pool and doing different things, you know, my mind in a different spot. But so what happened was I just switched it up, and I'm just like, I have to somehow figure out a way to make a living and provide for myself, because otherwise I'm just gonna, you know, it's not gonna work for me. Like, so, because we didn't grow up with much money, so like I either need to figure it out on my own, or I was in big trouble. So I just went to college. That's it. And so I got some jobs, and I did some stuff, and I started like getting more into like kind of like lifting weights and doing that, and just going to college and just studying and learning how to learn, and teaching myself how to learn, and just working. And I got a job at a casino. I was like a dealer, and then I got promoted fast to be a pit boss, or not a pit boss, but like a floor supervisor and stuff. So I was kind of living that life, and just off pool, like not even thinking about it, you know.
Okay, so you're trying to become a civilian, and then you know what happened. So then,
yeah, exactly.
But then you failed. You couldn't stay away forever. What got you back in the pool? Like, once you made that decision?
Well, what happened was I was going to school in River Falls, a small college town, and I was really interested. I was working at the casino, and I had all these ideas, you know, about business and how the casino should run. And I wrote like this 8-page manifesto that I was going to present to the casino, how we were going to change our customer service and make everything awesome. And I like literally, like, you know, like crazy at night, I'll up all night writing it out. And then I realized this is not going to happen. So then basically I remember someone telling me about a pool room idea in River Falls, and we didn't have a pool room. So long story short, I started a pool room. So I like maxed out my credit cards. I found a guy to co-sign on like $35,000 of the pool tables. And I got about 80 deep into this thing with not a penny in my pocket, 80K. And it just didn't, and I just built like my favorite pool room. Like I just built a coffee house, and I gutted this building out and did this really beautiful remodel, and in this small college town. And I just put the deal together. You know, I did market research and did a business plan and all that stuff, but like I just kind of like shoved all my chips in. For some reason at like, I was a little later in life now, like 24, 20 or so, I had like really good credit. So I just went all in and opened a pool room. So, and then what happened was I started playing pool because I was around pool and I wanted to get kids interested in playing, because we were like smoke free, no alcohol, and this was really controversial and was supposed to fail back in the, like the mid 90s. And I just wanted to do community stuff. I wanted to teach kids to play and have pool be this positive influence on people. And because pool had really like been like the biggest thing in my life to teach me how to like compete and try to like win and succeed and figure things out. And so I wanted other kids to learn that through pool. And so when I did my pool room, it was community based. And so I was out teaching these kids how to play. And then all of a sudden I'm hitting balls. And even though I hadn't hit in 5 years, I still hit them pretty good, So then what happened is shout out to Brian Brecky. Brian Brecky came in and bought in for half of the pool room with me. We ended up being partners, and he was really playing a lot and competing and traveling and trying to play regionally and locally, and just he was really all in on playing competitively. And it just I was just like, oh well, shrug, let's just play, So I ended up playing with him, and then I fell in the rabbit hole of pool, and just through like being around pool in the pool room and traveling and playing tournaments with Brecky, my competitive juices took over, and I got, like Godfather 3, like I said, they pulled me back in. So.
Gotcha. So then you're running the pool room, you start playing again, you're in your mid-20s. So then where are you now? Where were you then? Where are you now? How did you kind of get from there to here?
Oh, yeah. So then Brian and I played, and we played not a ton of time because we ended up selling the pool room within like a couple of years after he bought in, but within that year and a half or 2 years, we were playing a lot and practicing and traveling a little bit and playing locally and regionally, and it's like then after that we sold the pool room, and then we started playing leagues together. So then Brian and I played leagues and ended up, long story short, we won 6 national titles as team. For VNEA Valley and BCA. So it's like I was just around league pool. I was around like local pool, regional pool. And so we did that for how many ever years that took. And so then that was it. And then I was playing a little bit from there.
And I just want to jump back memory lane for a minute, because I remember, I didn't really know you that well at the time, but this is before handicapped stuff came along. And one thing I'm kind of nostalgic about is, man, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a group of players in Minnesota that were better than all the other players in Minnesota. They kind of dominated the local tournaments, and people looked up to them like, man, those are the players. And whenever we had open tournaments, those were the guys that could win. And then every year, 5 players would put together this league team that was just like a juggernaut league team that nobody else in Minnesota had a chance of beating. And then, maybe the second best team could upset them for one match or something, but they were heavy favorites against anybody else. And then those players would go to Vegas and be like the Minnesota, dominant Minnesota players that would go out and form a team and try to go out on the national scene. And so you were on that team, and 6 times you guys went out to Vegas, played in the VNEA, the Masters division, and that stacked team won 6 times in Vegas, which just shows, I think Minnesota has a very good bar table local scene. And but anyway, man, that was so a lot of people go out to Vegas, and there's a lot of divisions, and there's a lot of titles handed out, but it was a pretty big deal, man, to be on the winning team 6 years. You were kind of like that. You were basically a top Minnesota player. You were like, if the Minnesota had like a top player list, you were kind of you were on the in crowd of the top Minnesota players for that 10-year stretch to where you had those 6 wins. I mean, it was kind of a cool deal. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this, I mean, probably, I guess. And then just as an addendum or a correction, like, so fairness, like there was 3 years that we won back to back, like beat Valley and VCA and Valley both, and then the next year we went VCA and Valley both. And then the next year we won 1 out of 2. So we won 5 that way. And then Brian and I won a national with Lee when it came to Minnesota. Yep. So anyway, so it was 5 out of 6 in 3 years, and then 1 with Lee. So just to give, whatever, I don't know, just addendum. So, but whatever. Yeah. So that's it, man. So that was it. And
then you met me, and everything changed. No, I'm just kidding. So then,
exactly. exactly.
Because that's kind of where I came into it. So I met you around 2005, and we started traveling around a lot in 2006. So then, yeah. Okay, so then we started going and playing. So, I mean, that's kind of where a couple shifts occurred, if I remember right, like timelines. Because in 2006, when we met, there were still big table tournaments locally and regionally, and they were non-handicapped. So we started playing a lot of open tournaments and kind of doing well. And then two things kind of changed, if I remember. It's like, one, the local tournaments started becoming handicapped and all bar table. And we were already kind of at the top of the pack. So we were kind of like, well, now what? And then number two, so that kind of shifted us to say, well, what about playing some bigger events? Both because we've maybe things are handicapped and bar table, and maybe we're ready for something bigger. So that's when you and I started kind of going to more national level tournaments. And what were some of the things that you went through, like in the what was that like for you, and how did that play out?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it was a tough transition, man, because I can remember going to the U.S. Open the first time, and like the table trapezoided on me. And you and I know this term, and because I've talked about it since it happened so many years ago. But like, I got out there, bro, and I was just like, I looked at the table, and it was the first time in my life that the table did not look like squared off in the corners. It was like woogie and kind of like trapezoidal looking, like everything was so weird. Like the level of like freak out that I experienced when I went to the U.S. Open for the first time was just epic. And it was a really great eye opener, so that's one thing I would say about making the transition, is just how the table trapezoided. And then it just comes down to like just realizing I just need to keep running that. I need to get into that situation. You get in that situation because eventually the table will square up and look normal. Each time I do it, it'll look more and more normal. So, yeah.
How many pro? Yeah, I think that's a really important thing, because most people listening to this are not they're not professionals. So there's always that question, like, how do you go from being an amateur to being in professional tournaments? Like, how do you do that? And so you just mentioned, like, keep going. I'm really, now maybe I'm jumping all over here, but I want you to take it away. Like, how yeah.
I think just be prepared to like puke all over yourself, and then just, I mean, it's a gross analogy, but like wipe it off and just go back and just try again. Like, don't give up. Like, just keep, whatever your jump is, whatever jump you're trying to make. Like, if you're going from like a 600 and under Fargo to an open tournament, or a 650 cap, or whatever it is, it's like, you make the jump, understand that you might take some licks, and it might be like awful. Like going out to a pro tournament and having the table like go trapezoid, like that's not very encouraging. Like you think, well, shoot, man, like this is awful, right? But what happens is, if you don't give up, it's awful if you give up, and that you keep that in your memory, and that you let that define you as your career. But like, if you can like take like the worst punch that pool can give you, and then just like shrug it off and sit with it, let it hurt, because it's going to motivate you to keep going, hopefully harder and train harder. But like, I think that's it, man. I just think you like, that's it for each jump, is just understand that if it's hard, and if it's difficult, and if it hurts, it's only temporary. And the way you have to do it to beat it, to make the final jump, or to keep going, is to just keep going through that misery, or that difficulty, or those difficult situations.
Man, I think that's so important. And I'm really glad you shared that, because as I get thinking about it, I hear these questions all the time. People are saying, I am going to play this pro event, and I don't want to get nervous and dog it. What should I do? I'm playing this tournament, where I'm going to be playing these top players, or I haven't played in a competition for a while. How do I, what should I do so that when I show up, I can play really good? And all I can think is the same thing you're saying, which is like, that's not how it works. There's not something you can do in your basement where you can just go out and play well under pressure against top players in a pro tournament and just come out of the gate winning. Like, that's not how that works. You're going to go get your teeth kicked in. And the nature of the game is having the courage and the faith and the perseverance to be able to go get your teeth kicked in again and again, knowing that if you can go through that, you'll come out the other side. And there's just no way to get the smoke without making a fire. Like, there's no way to get the growth without going through the pain. And so it's like, how do you get in good shape without working out? It's like, that's not how this works. And so, but too many people never take action because they can't. They're trying to figure out a plan to how they're going to get the cheese without getting in the trap. And it's like, nope, that doesn't work. You have to go out and play and just, when you're not a loser because you lose. In my opinion, losers are people afraid of losing that never try. So it's like you have to go out. It's okay to lose as long as you keep going. I mean, you just got me really fired up. So thanks. All right. So then you're out hitting balls. So what are some things that how many pro tournaments do you think you've played?
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's see. Not a ton. I mean, what would you think, Dem? Like 30?
Dozens, like not hundreds. You haven't played hundreds, but it hasn't been 5.
Like
it's not
somewhere in the 30 range, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not 5 or 10, but it's not 100. It's probably I'd guess 30 to 50 seems like a pretty good guess. So you've been out, and it depends on what you call pro and stuff. I mean, Carom room tournaments where Dennis Hatch and Shane McMahon and Chip, who knows?
But I was thinking more like
so it's just
big table.
Yeah, so that's why it's hard to say because it depends on where you cut it off. Because I think that some of those Beloit tournaments where I'm trying to remember when we played those things like guys like Skyler are there and Alex.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay.
Anyways.
Yeah, I know. To you, with pro tournaments on a 9-footer. Yeah, I got you. But okay.
Dead horse.
So then, and I just wanted to share with the audience then that, Josh is hitting it pretty good. And before COVID, the last tournament that we went to together was a U.S. Open qualifier. So, we went out to Wisconsin and Josh played I don't remember how big the field was, but it was at least 32. And he ended up getting to the finals and beating Sergio Reed. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Okay. So now I'm going to set you up. Don't worry. I'm not going to steal your thunder. So, and Tyler Steyer's a listener on the podcast. I'm just letting you know that. So anyway, Tyler beat you in the second round that one. Tyler Steyer. Was it first round you drew Tyler?
I remember because we drew it out and I'm like, Tyler's like the 10x wild card in that field. It was just funny. And so I drew him first round.
Yeah, and it was and it was race to 7 on the winner side. And on the loser side, it was race to 6. And it was only, at first place was the qualifier, right, to win the spot in the U.S. Open. So it was kind of all or nothing. And so then you're coming through the B side. And I think that Sergio Rivas beat Tyler on the A side. So Tyler was on the B side, and you ran into him on the B side. What happened when you ran into Tyler on the B side of this tournament?
Okay. I don't remember the details of the match other than we ended up playing, and somehow it was alternate to break. And I think the score was probably like 5-4 me going to 6. And the 9 ball on the break counted. And so, spoiler. And it was alternate to break, and the table was breaking kind of rough and everything like that. And so I get to 5-4, and then Tyler says, I passed the break. And I was like, huh? Like I'm like, and this was like Mosconi Cup time. So I'm like, I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I just thought, oh, Tyler Steyler, I'm like, this is some high level Mosconi Cup stuff, like this is like stuff I have no idea what kind of move this is, like this is like out of my realm of understanding because this is some Mosconi Cup stuff. So then
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure the audience understands what you mean when he says I passed the break, because that's something that nobody does. So let's just explain. So what Tyler's saying is it's Tyler's turn to break. And what he's saying is I am electing not to break. I will let you break instead of me. Like I'm giving up my right to break this rack. You go ahead. That's basically he's passing the break to you.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yep. So he's exactly just what you said. So I'm just like confused, and I'm like, I grab the cube, I put it down, and I smash in the 9 ball and shake his hand, and I'm like, good match. And I was just like jaw on the floor, and I'm sure he was too. And Tyler's awesome, man. Like, by the way, like that was just such a weird run out and such a weird situation. And like I saw him like a couple hours later, and he was just all smiles and all class, and the guy's like, super class. So it was cool.
Nevertheless, it is still one of our favorite memories in pool. There's nothing better than being I remembered it being Hill, but you know better. It was 5-4, I guess. But anyway, I just
you know what, Demi? I was thinking about that too. I think it might have been Hill, honestly. Yeah.
I remember it being Hill. It was Hill. Tyler was breaking for the win. He passes you the break, and you get up and smash, and the 9 flies right in the side. Yeah. And then you go on and win the qualifier.
Yeah. And then
seriously, you win the
Yeah. Super funny.
And it was Hill with Sergio too. You went Hill with Sergio, and Yeah, there was a little dicey moving game on the hill, and you came up with a shot and got out, and
yeah.
go to Vegas.
And I remember I was over at you, and I'm just like, because it was kind of like a big win for me, you know. Like it's probably the toughest field I ever won a tournament on, and I'm old, man. I was like 47 at the time. It's like you always think it's over, you know, and it's like I'd been putting in work, but you just never know. So yeah, it was cool.
All right, so that is a pretty good, that's a pretty good arc, of kind of how you got in the pool, a little bit about your journey, how you transitioned from playing locally to starting to play nationally, what that was like at first, and where it kind of brought you. So with that, I wanted to have you as our guest, kind of our discussion topic for the day. I wanted to have you bring up like maybe a couple of memorable matches. So a couple of memorable, some things that have happened to you in your pool career that helped kind of build you into the player you are. I'm going to count the first experience of like trapezoiding, out at the first U.S. Open, like stuff like that. Like that seems like to me, that was a profound experience where you learned a lot about what it was to be under pressure and what you had to go through, and that it's not, there's no amount of preparation that can avoid that type of thing, and that you just have to be like that kind of thing. Like, I want you to share with the listeners maybe 2-3 stories like that, so that they can hear a point of view of what it's, what are some things that shaped your career. So what do you got for us? What do you got for us queued up?
Yeah. Well, okay, so I got a couple, like the humble brag. So it's like, I can talk about the bad stuff too, but like, so one thing that helped me that was interesting was we went down to Iowa, and I don't know if do we say names or not names. I mean, it's a strong regional player on bar tables, right? Like when we went down.
Yeah, when it comes to people you beat for cash or something, let's avoid the names.
I would say no names, like, so I'm just verifying with you. Yep. Okay. So there's a strong regional player in Iowa, and Demi and I went down, and I was there with Demi, and Demi was gambling with him on the bar tables and ended up winning. And then the guy was a real, like, whooper barker, like, I mean, he's like the hustling gear kind of guy. And so he points at me and he's like, well, I'll play you, blah, blah, blah. So then what happened was like, okay, I'll play him a set for 200 on the big table. And so I go to the bathroom and I hear them on the PA system, and they're like, they announced the match, and they announced me as a professional player coming in from Minnesota. And like, I'm still thinking I'm a nit that can't play, right? And so I'm like literally like, and I'm nervous, and because when I hear that, I'm like, what a shark. And so I'm like almost throwing up mom's spaghetti M&M in the bathroom. And so I went out and I shot the guy's nuts off. I literally laid a perfect set on him and beat him, and he asked me for the 7-ball. And so that was like a big thing for me because the table didn't trapezoid. And I literally just fell in dead stroke and just, just ran through them. And so that was a big thing for me to understand that I can be very nervous. I can be almost throwing up, and then I can go deliver like a near perfect set. So that's one of them. And then like an experience that was pretty profound. And then you had talked about expectations and how expectations can affect you. And so this is the get to the finals and dodge it. There was the IPT, and I won a sub qualifier for the IPT. You put in $100 and you get like, I won the tournament. I got like a $1,200 entry fee for the qualifier for the IPT, because it was where I around $1,000 back in the day. So then people came into Minnesota to play this. There was a lot of like, really good professional, like lower rated mid-range professional players came in. There was, I don't know if there was 16 players in this qualifier or something, but I beat like several guys that I didn't really understand at the time how good they were, and got to the finals. And I ended up playing a local guy in the finals, a guy that I had beaten in practice sessions. And I was just like, I got through all the killers, the murderer's row of all the guys that flew into play. And I'm playing in this thing. And if I win, like I get to qualify for the IPT tournament, which was like a guaranteed, $5,000 or whatever at the time. And I get to fly out to Vegas and all this stuff. And, I'm just like literally I'm thinking of the Mirage and the, like rounders. Like I've already got my plans, and I get to the finals, and my expectations were so sky high. I just got I lost. I just couldn't. It all fell apart, and he just ground me down and beat me, and I lost. And this is a guy that I felt like I would have, if you would have said a gambling like favorite, I thought I was like a 5-1 favorite on the guy, and I just lost. I just absolutely was just out of the moment and just got crushed. And
it is. I want to ask you about this because I have a comment on this, but I want to ask you first. You're right. I mean, expectations. So thinking you're the favorite or feeling you're supposed to win, or I have a great opportunity. This is my golden opportunity. This is my time. That is a really, really, really disruptive feeling because, I mean, you put all this pressure on yourself. You stop thinking about process. You start thinking about results. You get ahead of yourself. And all of a sudden, instead of enjoying the challenges along the way, you start feeling entitled to the outcome you want and resenting the challenges between you. And so if your opponent that you're supposed to run over starts playing really good and you're like, well, this isn't supposed to happen. It just puts you in a weak mindset and all this stuff. So how do you deal with that? Like, okay, so you've learned that lesson. Expectations are cancer. It is going to, really, really hurt your pool game. So what do you do if you were in that situation again? What would you do differently in your preparation to get ready to play a match against a player where you're a little bit of a favorite on paper?
Well, so that's a good question, Dem. I'm just trying to think, just for sake of time, I could dovetail it into the other thing, because I think it's preparation. Like, you have to be prepared. So, like, volume, like in that situation, that's just learning. Like, I had to go through that. I had to lose to learn in that situation. There's, I don't have a time machine. I can't go back. But like, moving forward now, when I'm playing matches where I'm maybe a favorite, like, so there's a local player here that I played, and I set up this thing where I'm going to play anybody on this table for $250 sets, races to 15 or 17 or whatever it was. It's like little challenge matches before COVID, and I ended up winning my first match, and then the second match I lost, and the guy I played, I really felt like I should win. Like, I felt like I liked that match. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's a very, very good player, but I like my end of it. And so what happens is, I think in the first match, I didn't take it seriously enough. I just thought, well, I've got enough edge. I'm just going to go run my edge. And my expectation was it'll all work out, right? And I'll just run my edge and it'll be great. And I'll just find my game. Well, what happened was I lost, and it was embarrassing, and it was gross, and it was like kind of soul crushing, And so I'm like, I had to look in the mirror, and then basically I just said, you know what? I'm going to run this back as soon as I can, but I need a couple weeks, and I am going to put in monster volume. I'm talking like monster volume, and I'm going to get so prepared that when I drive out to play him in 2 weeks, I am going to, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay with the result. Because if he can beat that, if he can beat this monster preparation, and then he's earned it, and I don't deserve to win, and I'm okay, and I'll move on. So I think the preparation is the solution for me for dealing with expectations. Because what happened was, I drove out there 2 weeks later, and I was kind of memoing to myself when I was driving out on a recording, and I was like, I have put in the work. Like there's no more what's going to happen. Like, I can't control any outcomes. Like, he can beat me. He can still win. I can still lose here, and I want to win. Trust me. Like, more than anything, I want to beat him. But I was okay with it. I was at peace with it. So I think for me, Dem, volume is the key, the solution. Like, preparation. Like, if you can go to whatever you're going to and know that you've put in the maximum amount of effort that's possible from your lifestyle, and you've wrung your rag of effort, then then for me it quiets all those expectation voices. That's it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think about, and we've talked about this forever, but I think about mental preparation too. And you're a big physical preparation guy, which of course these are both important. But I know that you really want to put in, find a table you're going to be competing on, get the table rented for the 2 days before you're going to compete, and find a way to get working into your schedule where you can put in 10 to 12 hours a day on that table for a day or two before you're going to compete. In addition to whatever other preparation you put in, the weeks leading up. So I know that. It's just for you and for everybody, like putting it, I mean, shoot, it's like, I did the same thing. I mean, I had a competition on that very same table like a month later. I mean, you got together with me and helped me put in a 10-hour session, and it definitely matters. So you get really, really ready. And it's like a rehearsal. You're rehearsing what you're going to do, and so, Yeah. But for me, I think that, so I talked to a gentleman last night. He called me, and he's a podcast listener, so I could shout out to him too. But anyway, he called me last night, and I'll just say he is a 500 Fargo. He is rated 500 exactly, okay? But he's got like 300 games in the system, and his actual Fargo, of course, everyone thinks everybody thinks they're underrated, and it's one of my running jokes for all you Fargo guys out there. How come I haven't met the guy that's like, yeah, it says I'm a 575, but I've only got 200 games, and I'm probably only a 500. I haven't met that guy. I haven't met the guy that thinks he's underrated and that his Fargo is just inflated because of his saw sample. I've only met the people that think they're underrated, but that's just a joke. I actually do believe that this guy plays a little better than 500, but he's playing at a 500 and under tournament. So he's going to be playing at a tournament with a big entry fee, and most of the players he's going to be playing against are 400, 450, 470. And meanwhile, he is barely sneaking at the cuff. He will be the highest rated player in the tournament. And it's a rating that's probably underrated because of a small sample size. So when I was talking to him, I could tell that he was like, kind of like excited because he's like, I got a good chance to win this thing, but kind of like dreading the fact that maybe he won't. Like, what if I don't? What does that mean if I don't? And I'm like, man, this is such a trap, because when it comes to expectation in pool, like if he goes into that thing thinking he's supposed to win, like he is going to go down in flames. Like, trust me, there is a hungry 470 out there that's looking to take a shot at a better player and see if they can't deliver their best set. And if this guy goes in thinking that his opponents are going to give him extra chances, or thinking it's going to come easy, or just feeling nervous and not really understanding why he's nervous, but not knowing that it's because he's thinking he's the favorite and he's not sure why he's like uncomfortable. And man, he's going to blink and it's going to be over. And some lower rated players, I mean, we don't need to, I mean, how many times, this is almost rhetorical, but how many times have we gone and gambled or matched up or sparred or played the tournament match against a lower rated player and lost? I mean, like, it happens all the time, right? So anyway, I told him, I said, you have to, and the same thing happened. Like I played for those that follow the podcast, this one, I mentioned a name because it was publicly said or whatever, when I played that Jeremy Fedkenhauer. It's like the same thing. It's like I'm higher rated on paper, all this stuff. And for those, I might have said this, but for those that remember, I said, the way I got through that is I'm like, yeah, maybe the guy I'm playing is a 720 Fargo rate, and maybe I'm higher rated, but the expectation of being the favorite is like an 800. That's how hard that is. And so what I told this guy is I said, yeah, use that formula. Just understand that you may be playing against 480s or 460s, but that the thought that you're supposed to win, or that this is your opportunity to win the tournament, I said, that's a 600 Fargo rate. Good luck with it. I'm like, you think you're the favorite because you're the highest rated. I think you're the underdog because I don't think you have what it takes to manage through that. So that's what you're up against. It's not just the players. You're up against that thought, and that's going to derail you. And by having that idea, it actually helps you, like, for me, it helps me dissipate that expectation to where I'm not like, yeah, I'm supposed to win. If I mess this up, it's, I blew my chance. It's like, no, this is really, really, really challenging to be the favorite. They say it's hard to get to the top and it's harder to stay there. That's because expectation, and it's hard to, and of course, it's hard to maintain desire and other stuff. But what I just shared with it is that's a good way that I use to mitigate my expectation, is that my opponent may be lower rated, but the thought that I'm better and the thought that I'm the favorite is actually really, really, really challenging. And that's what I'm fighting every bit as much as my opponent. So I think there's some mental preparation, and you like the physical preparation. And I think they're both important.
Yep, I agree.
Cool. So we got to hear, those are some good stories. And I remember, the IPT qualifier finals where you were playing the guy kind of bushwhacked you. The Tyler Steyer story, we learned from that the valuable lesson of not passing the break on the Hill game. And then I'm just trying to recap the things about the volume and the preparation, about how, if you lose to somebody, you lose. But one of the secrets to playing good is just putting in a ton of hours. And so that's good.
On that before we switch off, Dem, like one of the reasons why is like I feel like I've tried to I've struggled mentally ever since I picked up a cue. I mean, like mightily, and it's just been my experience that like volume helps quiet that for me, and so like everything you're saying is like awesome, and you're a brilliant mental guy, mental coach, and you have tons of like great ideas. It's just I think that for me, like, and I'm not saying, well, if you play enough volume, you can just plug all your mental leaks, but not by any stretch. I think that there's, I don't know, man. I just think there's a little bit of both, so, and you said that.
Well, yeah. And it's kind of like playing position and shooting balls in. It's like, there's no level of position play that you can play to where you can just go to the table and think, I'm going to move my cue ball around so well that I don't have to come with hard shots. Like, no, you are going to be tested with difficult situations and difficult shots where your execution and your heart and your nerves will be tested regardless of how good your patterns at cue ball are. So you can't just think that you're going to avoid that test with good cue ball. However, again, no matter how good you shoot and no matter how well you pass those tests, there's no way you're going to bomb your way through racks without playing good position and setting yourself up for natural angles and things like that. So it's like you need both shot making and cue ball, and you need them both. And I feel the same way. Like there's no amount of mental preparation you can do that will allow you to get by without putting in a lot of hours and without taking a lot of losses. But on the other hand, I don't know that there's enough hours you can put in to where if you're not learning from it and figuring out how to manage your mind. And that, I mean, don't get me wrong. I hear where you're thinking. It's like, well, I'd rather have somebody to put in endless hours, because with endless hours, the mental game will fall into line because through experience, like a lot of top pros, they don't necessarily, I don't know how much they journal and how much they prepare flashcards and how much they voice memo and how much they go to a sports psychologist. A lot of the time is if you play full time and, you're on the tour for 5 years, like they'll figure out how to get through those difficult situations just by repetition. The problem is that our listeners are not playing. So I would actually say volume is kind of the answer to both your physical game, and it will help your mental game as well. But for most people that don't have unlimited resources, that's where I think that you can benefit from being a little deliberate with both ends, because if you can play, I mean, if you play one night a week in leagues and every other weekend with your buddy and you practice for a couple hours here and there during the week, it's like if you have limited resources, you're not a full-time touring pro. That's where I think that you can learn a lot quicker by learning about the mental game, as opposed to just having it would take you a lifetime worth of experience to learn some of the lessons that you can learn listening to a podcast like this from me and you talking. So,
and that's why and honestly, that's why I'm like admittedly the worst teacher in the world, because I'm just like, someone comes to me with an issue and I'm like, well, just go play for 50 hours straight. It's like, that's not workable for anybody hardly. So it's just like, I got,
and it's playing for 50, but it's playing for 50, but it's playing for 50 hours straight after having played for 30 years.
Exactly,
so it's like, go play for 30 years and then put in a 50-hour warm-up session. And so that's a tall order. And
then you'll get where you want to be.
And do that by Monday when your match is. All right.
Get you where you want to give you an opportunity to maybe have a chance to get somewhere near where you think you want to be. Yeah. So, anyways, enough.
Yeah, but pool's a tough game, man. But you know what? That's why it's so good to hear that everybody loses, and that losing is a part of the journey, and that's if there's one thing that really stands out that you said, and I mean, I'm saying to me personally, I'm not saying that this is the only thing of value or that the listeners don't have their own favorite moment from today. But for me, when you're talking about your experience at the U.S. Open and just how necessary that was and how unavoidable that was, it's just like you look at where you want to be in the pool world and understand that you're gonna have to go vomit a few times on the way there. And so, do you want it or not? And if you're trying to find a way to get there without being tested, then the safe road just doesn't lead anywhere. And that meanwhile, that when you have those downs and you have those horrible moments when you're just discouraged and despairing and all these things, that actually doesn't mean that you're on the wrong road. That means you're on the right road, because that is actually the road that leads somewhere. The road to failure does not lead through despair and discouragement. Despair and discouragement are signs that you're on the success road. The road to failure is neutrality and disengagement and comfort. the road to failure is comfortable. So if you think that you're like, you know, your emotions are haywire and you're frustrated, angry, discouraged, despairing, and you think that's a bad sign, that those are signposts that you're on the right road, because the road to failure is actually a really comfortable, really, really alluring, tempting, persuasive, calling to seductive. It's a seductive road. So that's it. I think that's, to me, that's just that's a chilling idea. Yeah, exactly. The sirens. So, well, thanks. So, okay. So guys, and I'll just say, Josh Burbul is like my brother. He's my best friend. We've been traveling on the road for 15 years or more now. And it's just, I always love hanging out with him. So, I wanted to have him on today. And then before we wrap up, I wanted to mention one thing. So the VG10 is going on, and everybody should know this is the Virtual Ghost 10-ball tournament. And this is the real thing. Neight is the founder. He put it all together. And at first, you know, I was just like, oh, virtual tournament. I guess we got to keep busy until COVID's over. But now I realize two things. First of all, we've got the best players in the world competing. I mean, Fedor Gorst is playing, Albin Ocean. We're watching all these top Euro champions playing. And the second part is we've got, like, this is not going to go away once COVID's over. Like, once we get back to normal tournaments, yes, we are going to have a lot of normal events. But now that, yeah, COVID was what it took for us to all get webcams and to get streaming and do all this. But now that we've done this, and now that we know how to do it, we're going to continue to have these virtual tournaments, and this is just going to happen more and more often. And I think this is going to be one of those moments where in 20, 30, 40 years, when people look back at the boom of, wow, where did all these virtual tournaments took over the scene in the 2020s? It's like, yeah, that all started in 2020 because of COVID. But now look at it, and it's going to be a big part of the pool scene. So I don't know if it's going to be 50% of the pie chart of pro tournaments, or if it's going to be 25% of the pie chart of pro tournaments. But I predict that it's going to be a big part of our future of the game, because there's a lot of benefits. You know, you don't have to pay airfare, you don't have to pay hotels, you don't have to travel internationally, you don't have to get a passport. Like, there's a lot of benefit, and anybody from any level. I mean, gosh, what a game changer! I had this guy I talked to last night. He's at a small town, not a lot of great players around. I'm like, man, that doesn't have to stop you from growing the same way that you have YouTube and you can learn from top players in your living room. Well, also, you can match up with players from anywhere in the world just by doing a virtual ghost challenge. It's a truly amazing breakthrough, I think, and I'm glad that this is happening. So meanwhile, the level of play has gone through the roof. So I saw yesterday, for those that missed it, Jim Telfer, Fedor Gorst, Jean Salim, and I'm sorry, I don't know the fourth gentleman in the bracket, but they played, and it was the number one, it was the highest scored day of any VG tournament. The players ran so many racks off their break. So the number of breaks that are wet and legal, and then the number of rounds after the break, have been going up and up and up just over the last few months, because as people are settling into this format, they're practicing the break with different speeds, they're practicing how to get different patterns, and the amount of importance that's on the break, of course, is so high that the level of performance has quickly gotten better. And it's just like any new skill. You kind of change a rule, and then there's like a learning curve, and within a year, everybody's got it mastered. And so I'm watching these guys play, and it's breathtaking. So I want all you guys to check it out. Follow Cue It Up Podcast on Facebook, and follow the updates, and watch some of these matches. If you can't watch them live, watch some of the replays. I watched one with Jean Salim and Jim Telfer yesterday, and they both broke 9 times, and they both made a ball in the break 8 out of 8. They both ran out 8 out of 8. So after 9 racks, it was 8-8, and they went to sudden death, and they just kept turns running. They kept taking turns running a rack, sudden death. And finally, Jean Salim ended up eking it out. But Jean Salim and Jim Telfer outscored Fedor Gorst. So it was like 18 racks for Jean Salim out of 27 breaks. He made a ball in the break however many times, and then out of those, he ran out 18 times. Jim Telfer ran out 16, and Fedor Gorst was at 15. So it just goes to show you, even though Fedor Gorst is literally a world champion, some of these, these guys that are putting in a ton of work on the break to really get a consistent, result, and then mentally preparing and physically preparing, they're able to get out there, and it's a great show, and so I'm pretty excited. So check it out, VG10, Cue It Up Podcast. And then with that said, I wanted to talk a little bit. So I'm going to be competing in this event, and I will be playing on Monday, whatever day that is. Let's see, 16th, 17th, 18th. I think it's the 18th. So please don't tune in because I'm already nervous enough. But I have been trying to follow these guys' lead because I'm looking at all this and I'm like, man, how do you respond to that? And again, there's no way. There's like, I can't beat that. Like, how do you beat, somebody's going to break and run out 8 out of 9 times? I mean, it's a big, tall order. So, but what I can do is what Josh is saying, which is put in a lot of preparation. In our last podcast, Nate and I talked a lot about the break. And I may have mentioned this, but I wanted to really make sure I mentioned an idea because I have found, for me, I've practiced my break a lot over my life. And one thing that's really helped me, and I shared it with you already, Josh, is, sounds so simple, but nobody ever told me to do this. I started practicing long, straight shots where I just put, I've practiced straighted shots my whole life, but I put a ball on the foot string, so 2 diamonds out from the corner diagonally, and I put the cue ball on the head string where I'd be breaking from in the kitchen line. So it's basically the break shot shifted over so that instead of shooting the 1 into the rack, I'm shooting the 1 by itself into the corner pocket. It's the same distance, same angle. I just shift it over in front of the corner. And then I just practice shooting that ball in straight with speed. And it sounds obvious, but after shooting that a few times, there's a specific reason why that helps me, is that when I'm practicing my break, if I hit the break and lose my cue ball a little bit, I can sit there and tisk myself and say, oh, I didn't hit those square, but it doesn't penalize me enough. And it's just like I could sit there and say, oh, yeah, I wanted to hit those more square. That's too bad. But when you're practicing this diagonal straight-in shot into the corner, and if you miss that ball and that object ball comes flying off the end rail at 100 miles an hour and flies off the table or bounces 5 rails, it feels terrible. And my experience is somehow it forces you to place the correct priority level on the accuracy of hit. So if on the break shot, if it's 80% accuracy at 20% power, I think most of us, even if we know that it's 80% accuracy, most of us start edging towards 50-50 accuracy and power, and we start sacrificing accuracy for power when we really shouldn't. And then when it doesn't work, we chide ourselves, but it's hard to keep the right priority level on accuracy. And shooting shots into a pocket with speed forced me to place emphasis on accuracy. And as a result, by putting in just a handful of shots, I'm talking like 20 shots like that, where I'm just firing balls in, then when I went and broke, I felt stronger and more accurate and more controlled. I saw more improvement on my break after shooting in 20 balls diagonally than I have doing any number of other things, whether it's racking and breaking or any number of other things I've done. And so I wanted to share that with the listeners. And Josh, you've tried this. Tell me about your experience with doing that.
Well, yeah. So when you told me about this drill, I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So like that, I wasn't like that, but I was kind of like, I was a doubter for sure. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, how can that? And then I was practicing my break and I was spinning like a top. Like my break is definitely like, it goes from serviceable to once in a while okay to like awful, and there's like a range, and I was awful because I hurt my shoulder. I haven't been breaking, like literally haven't been breaking the balls in months because I couldn't physically, but like I've now started like rehab and I can start breaking the balls, and I came back to breaking and I was just like lost everything that I had found or worked on prior. And so then I'm like I was desperation mode, honestly. So I'm like, I'm going to try this thing that Demi described. And so I did it. I did 10 of them. I did 10 of those shots. And the first 3 or 4, I was like spinning it. I almost like rifled the cue ball into the side wall of my garage. And it was because I was hitting them pretty hard. And I was like scratching my head and I'm like, what? But then what it caused me to do is like, okay, if I don't want to wreck a $400 set of pool balls, I got to like pay attention here and dial it back a little bit on the power and then try to get a little more accurate. So the bottom line is, by the time I had got through 6, 7, 8, 10 of them, I was hitting them good. Like the ball wasn't spinning sideways. I was kind of having the pop that I was looking for in the shot. And then I racked up 10 ball, and I was just King Kong crushing them with accuracy. And so it was immediate, man. And it was like, when I called you and told you, so I was pretty excited, or I texted you. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I'm prone to hyperbole, but it's like, it cut like, I can't even describe how much time it cut off finding that spot and that hit and that accuracy. It's like, I mean, hours, days, weeks, months, I don't know. It was a lot. It was a lot, man. It was a lot. And it's like, I've done it one more time since then, I think, but I really even haven't had to so much. But like, it's just, it's like, it's the most amazing thing for the break that I've ever tried. And maybe that's just me. I don't know. Everyone's got to do their own thing, but like, trust me, I broke a lot, you know, like I broke a ton. Like before I hurt my shoulder, I was playing rotation and 10 ball ghost, and I had 1,000 games in. So I had broke the balls 1,000 times at least in the month prior or whatever before I got hurt. And so I was breaking a lot and trying to break accurately, and I was breaking okay. And you know, I've worked with other breaking things and ideas, and like, this is just absolutely, it was nuttish. It was the greatest. So thank you, Dem.
Yeah, and for sure. And one little tip I've learned a couple things on this is that I use the big stripes 11 through 15, because what happens is when I'm shooting them into the pockets at that speed, they get little black pocket mark rubs on them. And so I would practice shooting these balls at with speed, and I'd be like, man, my balls are all getting all, you know, gritty. I'm gonna have to polish them. Well, I played mostly 10 ball and 9 ball. At times I played mostly 10 ball, 9 ball, but I'm preparing for a 10 ball event. So I'm not using those big stripes as often. So I got the idea, I'll shoot those balls. And so what I do is I take the 10 balls, 1 through 10, I kind of put them at the side of my pool table so that they're not in play. And then I just practice shooting in those 5 balls that are 11 through 15. And I just shoot till I make 20 of them. So I do 4 sets of 5 until I pocket 20 balls with speed. And so then those balls get all kind of grimy and then black smears all over them because you're just whacking them in the back of the pocket. And then I can just pull them off the table, and then I can play 10 ball with my balls that are still in serviceable condition. So that way, if I polish those stripes, like I could just let them get really, really gritty, and then I can polish them one time instead of having to go through this every day. So that's a little tip about how I practice that. And yeah, my experience, I like to do 20 as a warm up, because you don't have to rack, you don't have to set up a break rack. Like, you could just set up that one ball and fire it in, and the next ball and the next ball. You can fire in 20 balls in like 5, 10, maybe 10 minutes. And so it's a great warm up for me. And it's a good way to warm up my break, because then when I go rack the balls for the break, it really, 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 it feels like the break shot, I'm actually hitting it softer than I'm hitting those balls, and it's less demanding than making those balls. And so the break actually is easier. And what I was noticing is I played a bunch of sets against the Ghosts yesterday and a bunch of breaks. And even, like, I had some sets with some really good breaking results, and I had some sets with some okay breaking results. But even when my break wasn't 100% effective, accuracy was not the issue. I was noticing, Josh, I didn't tell you this, I'm kind of excited. Like, even when I was failing on the break, like, I was only coming up with, 5 or 6 out of 9 that were wet breaks. But it wasn't because I was clipping the rack and spinning a cue ball. It was just because those balls tipped out of the side or whatever. It's like I'd look at the rack and I'd be like, oh, that didn't work. But then I look at the accuracy of the hit and the timing of the hit. Like, it was actually not a bad break. It just wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? And so it's like, for me, that was kind of a big deal. It's like, even when I'm mishitting them now, it's like, that's just, so okay, so that's a big deal. I've kind of beat that to death. So I just wanted to kind of cover that. And I think we'll start wrapping up the episode. I have a coach's corner that I'm going to do a little wrap on, but other than that, I think we're going to call it a day. We've talked about, we kind of introduced you, talked about some life stories and some lessons along the way, and kind of the story of how you go from being an amateur to playing in pro tournaments. And I think that should help a lot of you guys understand what to expect, and that there's just really no secret to it. You just have to kind of do it and keep going, and there's no way to avoid the ups and downs. So I think that's a great share, and that's all I've got. So, Josh, do you have anything else you want to share with the listeners, or any other pearls before we?
Yeah, I do. It's like a sub shout out. So Tyler Steyer shout out. Like, the guy's a beast. Like, he's absolutely great. So, like, I just feel like that's a story where I just want to be very, very, very clear. Like I just don't want want any hard feelings from the guy or anything. Like he's awesome. He's 10x the player I am. I get it. It was a funny story and a funny result. And you're right, it was Hill, and I went on to do well in the tournament. So it's a great story, and someone had to be the guy that passed the break, and it just happened to be Tyler, and so that's it, man. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a gem. It's just one of those weird things that happens, and that's what I love about pool is if you play long enough, you just get to see some weird things happen where it's like, oh, I can't believe that actually happened, or
yeah, and then I actually,
like that, so.
And the other thing that's funny, just like complete like transparency is like, I'm super nervous. So like me smashing in the 9-ball, like it took away a lot of the nerves. It was just funny, so it's funny. It was a funny situation. So, You know
what that reminds me of? I remember playing, it was Hill, and I was probably 16 and I was playing this guy a $50 set. We were racing a 7 and it was 6-6 and I broke and I made a ball. And I was so nervous. We're playing 9-ball, and I was so nervous because I'm just like, I wanted it so bad. And I start running the balls out, Josh. And I make the 1, and I get on the 2, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get through the 5-ball. And I'm running the balls, and I get to the 5, and then I'm looking around to see how I'm going to run out the rest of the balls. And I blink, and the 9-ball's not on the table. And I'm like,
you made the 9.
There's the 9.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I think I broke at the 9, and it was the weirdest thing because here I am like I'm across the finish line. I don't even know. So it's like here I am like breathing deep and getting off balls. I'm like my heart's in my chest. And I'm just like, do I have what it takes to get through these balls? And I kind of looked around. I'm like, oh, I won. It was the weirdest thing ever. Like it was just kind of this weird fade to reality where I'm like, oh, I guess good match. And I went and shook his hand and took the money, and it's like it was just kind of funny, man. It's just that's how it felt watching you. It was like, oh. Look at that. I guess it's over. So anyway.
Oh, I know exactly. Because I'm just like, this is awful. And then then that happens, and I'm like, oh, I guess it doesn't have to be awful anymore. I can just go on to the next one.
And I'm sure everybody's had the experience. Everybody's had the experience where they're like on a turn, like they have tournaments where they're race to 7 on the winners, race to 6 on the losers. And I don't know. This has probably happened to me 20 times, so I'm sure it's happened to everybody. Where you're on the B side and it's a race to 6. But you don't know that it's a race to 6. You're still thinking race to 7. So you're sitting there and it's like, you're like 5-5 and it's actually Hill, but you don't know that. You just calmly run out the balls and then they go shake your hand. And you're like, that was Hill. Yeah, like I probably would have died that if I'd known that was on the Hill.
Exactly. Gosh, you see that in tournaments all the time where it turns into a controversy almost where the guy's like, well, we played the game, the other guy, so whatever.
Yeah. Good memories, man. Well, Josh, thanks again. If you want to stick around, you can. I'm just going to do my coach's corner, but I'll tell you, that was it was a treat. So for those that listen, if you want to hear more of Josh in the future, let us know. This was my first solo podcast, so if you want me to wait for Neight next time, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you want to hear more of me and Josh, or I've got a couple other ideas of who I could bring in, let me know as well. All right. But what's on my mind today has to do with losing focus. And so Josh and I just reviewed a match we just found some random guy on YouTube that had been doing a race to 5 against the 10-ball ghost. And this gentleman some guy we don't know, and he streamed the set and put it on YouTube. And so Josh and I, we once in a while we review pool matches and we kind of study and talk about what works and what doesn't work. And, it's part of we push each other, right? We try to train. So anyway, we were watching this guy's match and I noticed something. So the first rack, the guy had a very, very, very difficult 1, 2, 3, 4. But if he somehow could get through the 1, 2, 3, 4, the rest of the balls were really sitting well to where it was pretty easy. And the guy ran through the 1, 2, 3, 4. And it was, I don't know if I could have ran those balls. It was really, really tough. And then as soon as he did, he got very lazy on the 5-ball. And after he kind of solved the wreck, he got very lazy and played himself out of line and ended up getting really out of line to where he had to make some hero bank shot and several recovery shots. And he somehow got out, but it was like he really got himself out of line. I was like, oh, that's weird. So then the next rack happens again. He gets through the difficult part of the rack, deals with this combination or this breakout. He has to do some carom to open up a pocket, and he solves the rack. And as soon as he solves the rack, the very next shot, he gets out of line again and has to make 2 recovery shots. some thin cut, some rail first shot. It was dicey. And then the third rack happened again. He got through the crux of the rack, solved the rack, and the very next shot got careless and left himself elevated over some balls to where he just got careless with his cue ball speed and put himself jacked up where he could have very easily missed. Now, if it happens once, that's one thing, but I just saw it 3 times in a row. This player navigated through the very difficult part of the rack like a champion. And then 3 times in a row, almost cost himself the game and worked himself into these trappy situations and just made the rest of the rack, instead of being tic-tac-toe, he made it like 3D chess. And so I was watching that, and I was really fascinated by that, because I think that's happened to all of us. It's happened to all of us. I was like, well, why is that? And how do you stop that? And so if you want, I'm gonna this will be like a challenge to the listeners. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the podcast and answer that question. How do you solve that where you keep losing focus after you solve the rack? So once you have your answer, come back. I'll give you a second. All right. So if you said that the best way to solve that is to just remind yourself not to lose focus, or just try to keep focused, in my opinion, that's not going to work. Because, like, I don't really know what that even means. Like, what do you mean you're going to just try? Like, that's like, I don't know, man. There's something about that where it's like, how are you going to stop missing? Well, I'm just going to try not to miss. It's like, yeah, see, to me, the losing focus is the symptom of a deeper problem. Like, what is causing this player to play so well and then just completely lose focus? Like, why is that happening? Is it a coincidence? Is it because he really, like, does he need to write a Post-it note and tape a Post-it note to his cue saying don't lose focus? Is that really the answer here? I don't think it is. So I've thought a lot about this in the last week, because it was really a profound thing. For me to see this was really a big deal, to see it 3 times in a row that vividly. Because here's why. I asked myself, if that guy came and did a 3-day boot camp with me, and I told him, hey, man, you're losing focus after you solve the rack, and this is going to cost you, he would probably say, oh, I know. Yeah, I mean, I could fix that. I'll stop doing that. But really, like, does he really know? Does he really have it figured out? Like, if he did, why is that happening? And so meanwhile, I asked myself the question, how long would he have to train? And how long would he have to shoot balls and practice shots and practice his break and practice his position? How much work would he have to put into his game to compensate for the penalty he's applying to himself by losing focus once a rack? I'm like, can he fix that with 20 hours of play, with a month of practice, with a year of practice? And I came to the conclusion, never. I concluded that he could practice every day for the rest of his life, and if he doesn't solve this problem, there's no amount of improvement he can show with physical execution that's going to compensate for blundering once a rack mentally. And so I was really, really fascinated. So here's what I came up with. Like, what is the actual problem that's causing that symptom? And to me, I broke it down to 2 things. One is a pass-fail mindset, and 2 is a desire to have the game be easy. And so the pass-fail mindset, this means that when people look at tables, they grade themselves on either they ran out or they didn't run out. And if they ran out, they win. And if they don't run out, they messed up. And anything in between, it's like, nope, it's either pass-fail. And I don't feel like that's accurate, because on an individual rack, you either run out or you don't run out. But what I look at is the quality of the run out, the quality of the shots. And yes, in this instance, you are either going to run out or not run out. But over many, many, many racks, the quality of all your shots will dictate how many of those racks you do end up passing. And so the problem with thinking of things in a pass-fail mindset is that you can allow yourself to make low-quality shots and make mistakes that you get away with, and you don't consider those mistakes because they didn't burn you this time. So if you don't penalize, so if you get out of line and then have to make some recovery shot, and then you hook yourself and you jump the ball in and you run out, you're like, oh, I guess that worked. It's like, well, then you're not grading things correctly. If you're not considering those things errors and you're not trying to learn from those and improve upon those, then if you're only waiting till you actually go down in flames before you realize it was a mistake, then you're not learning enough lessons, and you might not be learning the right lessons, because a lot of times where you actually make the error is several shots after where the first error that led to that. So anyway, that's the first part. Is I don't believe in a pass-fail mindset. The second part is this idea about thinking that the game should be easy. I think a lot of us deep down desire to just get so good at the game that we could just run around and all the balls go in like the color of money, Tom Cruise. We want to, so it's like, and there's ways of doing that. If you play on big enough pockets and if you play against bad enough opponents, like, if you practice and you play with recreational players and you put in a lot of hours and you go to your local league and you play against guys that don't really play much pool and you're playing on, valley bar tables with 5-inch holes, you can kind of waltz around the table and shoot open balls in and kind of act like, oh yeah, for a player like me, this game's easy. But the problem is that if you're trying to, like, I have a saying that bad players act like the game is easy and they make it hard. Whereas good players treat the game like it's hard and then they keep it really easy. And the problem with wanting to so I feel like this crux where it's like you solve the hard part of the rack and then you get to the point where you're like, oh, great, from here, now I can twirl around like Tom Cruise and everything's easy for a player like me. And it just, that doesn't lead to great results. And the challenge I gave to some of my students is I said, think about it this way. If your opponent was playing 8-ball, if they broke dry and you got to the table and there was 15 balls and you had to run stripes and they were challenging and some short side shots and some breakouts, you'd take that opportunity very seriously and you treat it with a lot of respect. But suppose they ran up to the 8-ball and scratched. So now all the balls are open and you just got 7 open stripes with ball in hand to start with. There's a real tendency to just be like, oh, these balls are wide open and this will be no problem. And I'll just bomb through these. And that lack of respect will cause you to wipe out on open racks because you're like, oh, when's the part where I just get to run through the game? I just want it to be easy. And yeah, once in a while it gets tough and I'll deal with how it's tough, but then I just want to get to the part where I get to twirl. When do I get to twirl my cue around again? And if you have a pass-fail mindset, or if you have the idea that you just want to get to where you can twirl your cue around and have the game be easy, and that ties in with our conversation about expectations earlier about how we want it to go, like those lead to losing focus. Like losing focus comes from desiring to just be able to get to the easy part where you get to twirl your cue around, and as long as you win, it doesn't matter what the quality is. But if instead you understand that quality matters and that maybe you could put in a good quality effort and fail on this attempt, but in the long run, it's going to be the average quality of all your shots that are going to determine your future. And that as far as the game being easy, your goal is not to build your skills. So if the game gets easy, the goal is to build your skills so that you can turn in higher and higher quality performances rack by rack. That is the way to stay focused. And so it helps to have ways of measuring the quality of your shots and measuring the quality of your runouts. I can't go on much more, so I'll just say, for me, one example would be playing bar table 8-ball. You could measure the quality of your runout by saying, how much did my cue ball travel after every ball contact? Did I ever have to shoot any shots that were really difficult? Did I ever have to shoot anything really hard or with extreme draw or extreme spin? Did I ever have to do anything really dangerous? Did I run into other balls? And if you can get up there, if you're up there stumbling through that rack, that's more quality. But if you can get up there and minimize your cue ball movement, play a good key ball, play a good pattern, keep out of danger, execute a good plan, that's high quality. And so it would behoove you to develop some standards as to what you consider to be good pool, and then strive for quality. Don't strive to win the rack. Strive to win the rack with a gymnast-like performance. That would be my advice to all of you to get out of that losing focus trap. So, hope you enjoyed. Hope you had fun with the podcast. We'll wrap it up. So, thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you on Monday for the VG10. Take care.